that we men, deep in our brains and deep in our biology, we have this like super intense need for women.
This podcast is for entertainment only and not intended for medical purposes.
Enter the Freud.
Okay, so today's subject happens to be sugaring, sugar babies, sugar dating, sugar daddy, which nobody ever talks about the perspective of the sugar daddy.
No, because those are just horrible, awful, toxic people that should all be put in prison. That's why.
Yeah.
And who wants to hear the prisoner's perspective? Fuck them.
Okay, maybe there's something to that, but I'm really trying to figure out that my first reaction to this subject as I started to do a deeper dive is how did so many sociopathic women get involved in it? And then my other question is, because everyone says their intentions are pure, that they're just there to kind of adventure and have fun and do this kind of a dating thing. But then as soon as you hear their description of how they're interacting with these people, it's so exploitative and so bizarre that...
Yep. Okay, so let's tell everyone what you're referring to. So porn... I'd seen a little bit of this, but porn found some other like YouTube videos and TikTok videos and stuff. There's probably a whole world. I don't know if you found a whole world of these young attractive women. I'm actually shocked they did it. They're just fully revealing their playbook, and they're revealing how explicitly, intentionally, strategically, and fairly skillfully they're exploiting, and we almost could even say abusing sugar daddies. So just to be clear, the young women who are the sugar babies, who most of society thinks are the victims, are very clear. Just go ahead and YouTube search videos on like how to be a sugar baby or whatever, and you'll see yourself all these young women talking about their good strategies to milk and exploit and manipulate and, you know, I wouldn't go so far as to say steal, but, you know, it's like it doesn't have an ethical feel what they're doing.
Yeah, in some cases they're fully just ripping off old, sad, dejected, ugly, unfortunate people. Really.
Yep. Now that you say that, let me kind of connect it. There is a huge, like a multi-billion-dollar industry of people scamming the elderly. So elderly people who aren't savvy about internet or technology, and people will call them up or email them or this or that. Like a friend, just let me give an example. A good friend of mine, this happened to him. His grandma called him and she's like, "Oliver, are you okay? I'm so sorry." And she's freaking out. He's like, "Grandma, what are you talking about?" And she was like, "Well, this guy called me and well, long story short, some guy called her, said it was him, got her to say the name, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'm Oliver, and I'm like, you know, whatever, some sob story, please wire me a bunch of money." So there's this huge scamming of the elderly.
Oh, yeah.
And what these women are doing is not, it's like in the same category. It's not quite as extreme, but it's in the same category. These young, sharp women are targeting clueless, foolish, like lonely, desperate older men who are not so sharp and exploiting them for, I bet worldwide it's certainly hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars.
It's so crazy. I wasn't even ready to go this far. It's almost like I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this and really psychoanalyze what is happening to both sides of the equation. But as you point out, yes, this is without a doubt, certainly the one that I sent you specifically, and since then I listened to multiple podcasts of women explaining exactly how they make their profiles, how they talk to them initially, what do they say first, what is their follow-up method to make sure that they appear empathetic, right? The shit that they're the level of bizarre, straight sociopathic, I'm pretending to like you discussions are it's amazing. And no one has any awareness that, oh, by the way, this is like a drug and is going to be really hard to kick once you decide to be in a different type of relationship. It's like a lot of these young women seem really enthusiastic, as anyone would be, because they just have this huge flow of cash coming to them. And a lot of it is actually sex for money, right? And that's okay. It's just what they're doing. And then they're really excited that, hey, this is more honest than traditional relationships. That's very commonly said. This is way more honest because it's a straightforward transaction. You don't have to have this confusing kind of oh, what are we doing? What is our arrangement? What are we doing in our, as we talked last time, our situationship, right?
Yep.
But then I can't figure out, once you become 30, closer to 40, and you want to change your style, how do you get off that drug? I don't know.
Get off the sugar baby drug.
Yeah, it really looks like an altered state in the way that and I can't tell if it's just the ones who have a personality that uniquely makes you go be so exhibitionist as well, that you would then create a podcast and then go on a YouTube channel to tell how, look at how I exploit all these people. Is that a certain personality trait, or does this style of relationship through apps with that much attention, would it make anyone start to appear sociopathic? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. Okay, so there's let's just try to be clear and lay out what we're talking about here. Okay, so there's a huge industry out there that the internet and OnlyFans and online dating and seeking arrangement and sugardaddies.com has created this new industry that's exploded. I'm sure it's $1 billion+ industry.
There's also there's tons of sugar baby sites. Tons. Yep. It turns out. I even listened to a woman who created her own company where she hires what they call angels, and then the sugar daddies are angel investors. Surprise. Right? It's way bigger than just a few sites, actually.
Yeah, tons of sites. And, so there's sites that are dedicated, like seekingarrangement.com is the most famous,
yes.
But there's tons of them. And then OnlyFans is a similar thing, is in the similar general category. And then there's just the kind of the same thing that's been happening for decades of just people doing it the old-fashioned way. But because of OnlyFans, because of seekingarrangement.com, sugardaddy.com, et cetera, this has exploded. And you're saying it's created this new, societal wave of women who, their eyes have gotten as big as saucers. Like, wow, I can get tons of men fawning over me and Venmoing me money. And wow, and it's like their eyes get big and they start drooling with greed of how can I harvest more cash cows of men? And it's like they get addicted. It's like a drug. And I think the drug addiction state you're talking about is a very familiar one. I think gambling addiction is the same thing. It's like, wow, if I learn to count cards at blackjack, I'm going to become rich, or poker addiction or whatever. It's that same drug.
Yeah.
And there's probably tons of other examples of it, but it's an interesting new phenomenon. All these women who are like, wow, if I do a seductive thing, I get tons of attention and I get tons of money. This is great. I hit the lottery. I watched this one interview where this woman said, I couldn't believe it. It was like my pussy was an ATM machine.
Yes. Dude, this is the kind of but so when you said the old-fashioned way to do it, you're saying sex workers, right? Like the old
it's so much bigger than that. It opens up this huge question of what is a romantic relationship? How do I scratch your back and you scratch my back? And this probably goes back to ancient times of what's the contract between a man and a woman. Of course, now it can be any gender, right? But in the old-fashioned days, it's like, what's the contract between a man and a woman, and what does this person get out of it, and what does this person get out of it? And it's a really fascinating area that when you start talking, I'm like scared to start talking about it, because when you start laying it bare, people start to get pissed and offended,
Oh, yeah.
and accusations fly on both sides, and it's
Absolutely.
a whole can of worms.
Well, look at, like, okay, we started out by talking about women because that's who predominantly is in the role of sugar babies, because of course there are gay people doing this too, but it's just like, and then of course I mean like gay men, because I'm pointing at women, but
Yeah, and there's male sugar babies too, but by far the dominant thing is young attractive women getting older, more financially comfortable guys.
exactly.
To pay them for, sometimes to pay them for nothing, or sometimes to pay them for sex, or anywhere in between.
Oh yeah, exactly. Anywhere in between. It could be photos. It could be just a few emails. It could be, well, you come and tie me up, and then then of course the obvious thing is, yeah, we have sex, and then some people say, oh, but I don't want to just have sex. We have to go to dinner and drink wine first. And I'm like, really? That's all you want? That's fucking crazy. Whatever, dude. You know what? What?
Well, but hold on. I think you were implying that the sugar baby says that, but the opposite also happens, which is a woman just wants to have sex and be done with it real quick, and then the guy is like, no, can we go have dinner and drink wine first?
Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. Look, see, it's so easy for these kind of conversations to get hung up on, oh my God, how dare these women exploit these old men? Except that, like, as anyone who paid attention to the whole pickup artist scene, was entirely men attempting to exploit fundamental evolutionary types of traits within women so that they could basically fuck as many women as possible, right? And they had no intention. It's like, it's truly exploitative when you break it down in the way that these guys were talking about it, you know?
Oh, fuck yeah. All right, let's go.
All right, man. Back in action. Dude, the part that we missed, which unfortunately, was I'm like Johnny English and I went and took a piss with my headphones in. Dude, that shit is definitely well, since the mic is in the room, but it just like I could still hear you fucking with your thing. But whatever, dude. That happened. All right, man.
So, all right, you want me just to randomly start somewhere to get us back into it?
Yeah, go for it.
So we've mostly been kind of talking about how the women are exploiting the men, and I just want to be clear that we get that men have been sexually / financially exploiting women for thousands of years, and that's still a problem. And I'm not trying to say women are any more guilty than men. And it's probably a good simplification, generalization to say men have been exploiting women sexually and financially for thousands of women for years. And now just recently, women are starting to have this new way and learn how, and are now starting to exploit men. And they probably are still doing it way, way less than men. Yeah. But it's just still an interesting phenomenon to be aware of and to think about and to discuss. So,
yeah, definitely, that's cool to put that in perspective, right? Because there's something about this that I don't want to rain on the parade of women in this exploration. I'm actually like super into it, supportive, but because I can't avoid this clinical implication of, hey, you're starting to sound fucking crazy. You sound like a manipulative sociopath. Like, how are you going to then switch back from this type of exploitation to then go and eventually be in a normal kind of a relationship where the person doesn't feel like they're in some weird designed extortion. So
you kind of feel like these women who are doing that are fucking themselves up for future healthy relationship potential.
Definitely. But I'm also like all for it. It's almost like the idea that you're going to start experimenting smoking weed, right? And it's like, yeah, totally, you should go try that. And then, but also like really take a look at what happens if you start to attach your reward system to an external regulation system like cannabinoids, alcohol, crack cocaine, and in this case, being a sugar baby, right? Like if you wrap yourself to some kind of an app and or this type of a arrangement, and then you think you're just going to somehow quit one day, like the stories say, and then I met my now husband and shit's okay. Like, all right, buddy, like that's a nice fairy tale, and I'm a little concerned. That's all.
And yeah, so kind of describe a little bit like what you think the psychology of these women is and how it will affect their future relationship ability. Well,
so I guess from the few people that I've actually talked to, right, like actual patients, and then from these women that I listened to their own accounts and their tales of getting into being a sugar baby and getting into having a webcam and other layers of exchange of sex for money, and I'm like, oh, okay, it is really interesting, and there's an often confusion of romance and then the trade-off of power dynamics between people, and I think those two subjects are really often confused and talked about as if it's the same thing. And they're not, obviously, right? Like, romance is not a power struggle. And if it is, well, then you have a power struggle and you're bringing the romantic part into it and or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be a discussion of who has more power.
Yep.
You with me on that? And I guess just to be clear what that idea of power is, I don't want to get it confused with this other kind of inherited power that gets confused into conversations of race and other patriarchy and that kind of thing. I'm not trying to say that because in this case, if that's true, then women have all the power here, right? Women have the titties and people want the titties, right? And to say like, oh my God, look at your privilege, your titty privilege, right? You with me on this? Am I losing?
I'm like what you're saying is really like provoking on my mind to go down a million deep, complicated holes, and I don't know what to say. So I'm just gonna. I have some thoughts, but I don't know if I trust what I'm gonna say. Okay.
Then just track this.
So shit. I'm just gonna say it, and we'll examine whether or not it's true. My knee-jerk reaction is I agree with you. I don't think romance is a power struggle. However, I think relationships are a lot of different things, and romance is just one of them. And I think there are a lot of power dynamics in relationships, and I think romance is maybe one of the few areas where power doesn't come in. But like sex and power, I think, are closely related.
Okay.
And security is definitely a power thing, and basically, you and I want to spend time together, and what are the dynamics going to be of how we spend time together? Like let's just talk about you and me. Let's just say you and I are two gay guys and we're going to date. It's like, hey, Porn, do you want to go out on a date? Right there, me inviting you on a date, there is some power there. I've given you power because I've made myself vulnerable to you, and you now have the power to accept me or reject me. And let's say you say, okay, then we go out on the date. And who's going to pay for the date? There's power in that. And then, like, if I want to have sex with you, I think I've now given you the power to accept or deny, right? And then human sexuality is like everyone like gets turned on by different power dynamics, like the whole top bottom sadomasochistic, like daddy fantasy, this fantasy, it's just like power. For some reason, power dynamics are really sexy to humans. So I just like don't know what the fuck to think about this.
Dude, the fact that you just turned this into we're in a gay relationship is fucking hilarious. That one's hard. All right, we're going to have to diverge from that potentially obscurity.
Well, I just was doing that to kind of take gender out of it, because as soon as you bring gender in it, everyone comes up with their patriarchal this, that, and the other.
Yeah, well,
but it's just so simple. Like you and me, it just becomes this really simple thing. We're like two white dudes, and if we start trying to date or go out to dinner or have sex, like there's power involved in it, and that doesn't mean it's a patriarchal thing or a toxic thing or anything. It's just like part of the deal.
You definitely achieved that with this kind of a thought experience, and I'm bizarrely uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what why did that make me homophobic? Like, with all these other thought experiments, I'm totally cool. But this, like, it brought me back to some junior high reaction of just like, that's gay, bro. Dude, you can't say that. That's gay. I just had a total freak out. But all right.
Okay, so that's a whole nother interesting area that is not really the topic. But to bring it back to the topic, there is even power in that thing that you're talking about,
Absolutely. Yes. Well, so I was wrong to just start wildly differentiating between, because I need to differentiate something here. There's just a clear, almost like a hierarchy that emerges as soon as you start looking at sugar babies and sugar dating. It's like there's fucking editing this shit when there's like interruptions, but whatever, man. I'm gonna edit this one. All right.
Okay. All right. So I'll bring you back up to where you were.
Please.
We were talking about. You had mentioned power. You had said that romance is not power, and then I went off on a thing about I agree that romance is not power, but that their power is always part of a romantic relationship. And then you started getting homophobic.
Yeah, I did. I freaked out and got homophobic. Okay, but so it's just I have this real strange need to identify within the sugaring and sugar baby relationships that I'm looking at. It's like I want to just make it clear that there really is a kind of natural, innocent, and super cool exploration of women figuring out how to be in a dynamic with men in exchange for money and objects and good times and stuff. Like I really can get down with that. And then there's kind of a component of just like really creepy extortion of what I can absolutely see is just like the most dejected, sad people on the planet. And I'm not cool with that kind of it's like I want to protect those guys. And I don't know what the hell that's about.
There's an aspect of male psychology and male sexuality that women don't understand, but actually I don't even think men really understand it. It drives us, but I don't think most people are conscious of it, because it's doesn't feel good to be a man to have this. So let me see if I can describe it. That we men, and maybe this is true of women, I don't know, probably is, but this thing is definitely men, that we men, deep in our brains and deep in our biology, we have this like super intense need for women. And it's pretty much outside our control. So it's like the thing that we have the least control of, and it's the thing that's maybe the most intensely needed. Is we need a woman to love us, we need a woman to think we're great, we need a woman to want to have sex with us, we need a woman to have sex with. And it's such a powerful need. Maybe it's the most powerful if we add all of those: love, connection, admire us, have sex with us, want to have sex with us, desire us. All of those things, your average male and hetero male desperately needs from a woman, and we have zero control over it. Unlike most other things, you can control getting money and getting food and getting shelter and these kinds of things. Whereas the woman thing, you can't control it 100% because you're dependent on another person. And it's like women definitely don't get it, and most men don't get it. It's like a profoundly vulnerable, powerless, really scary place for a man to be. And all of us have it, and it's deep in all of us, and we're all kind of terrified of it. So then when we see women on YouTube talking about how they're gonna exploit sugar daddies, you just can't help but imagine these guys who are lonely, nerdy, low self-esteem. You can't help but imagine them just being devastated emotionally and self-esteem being devastated by when they are getting played and manipulated by these young, attractive women.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a dark place. And then there's this whole world of incels, and you just imagine all these angry, lonely, pathetic, and potentially violent men getting exploited and used by women, and it's just this painful, dark, hate-filled world.
Oh, it's disturbing. Yeah, man. That is super disturbing. And then it's so strange that it brings out, just you describing this, it kind of brings out this slightly, disturbed part of myself, because relationships are really hard when you're young and you're just trying to figure it out, and you get so much rejection in your pursuit to find out where you fit in this whole equation. And it's like that what I just said about how I could definitely trick these exploitative women, it's like that comes from my own little rejected place, right? Like some like past history of feeling extorted or something, right?
Yes.
And I can imagine, like, because I haven't really been that extorted, I think, by women, unlike my buddy Frank, who thinks he was sex trafficked by his like supermodel wife, who they would go and have threesomes all the time. And he's like, dude, I was sex trafficked, man. That's bullshit. And I'm like, all right, buddy. Nobody has any fucking empathy for your situation, dude. But in a way, nobody has any empathy for my situation either. But then I can imagine if you take this and amplify it times 10 or 100, man, I have some real concern. And you think maybe I'm going the wrong way with this. I don't think this is kind of like an attractive way to discuss it.
Well, I don't know, but the one interesting point that's coming up on my mind is, so when you see these women on YouTube talking about how they're going to exploit men, it hits this kind of nerve in you, and then what you want to do is go and like beat them at this game. You kind of want to trick them back. That's your kind of knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, definitely.
And it makes me think that nerve that gets hit in you is probably the exact same nerve that got hit in these ladies.
Oh, yeah.
Because women for centuries have been being exploited and controlled by men. And so now the women, that nerve gets hit, and so now they're fighting back.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, so many women, the first time that they hook up with a dude, the guy, like, puts on all this charm and implies relationship, right? They imply, oh, we're going to have this thing. And then as soon as they have sex, boom, the dude's out. He's just like, oh, and then whatever the implied deal was, they break the deal. And then that would be a pretty hard rejection for a person. And it's like, whatever I think I've experienced as rejection, which of course I did as a young dude, right? You're not going to make it through the battlefield of love and pursuit of happiness without rejection, man. And so, like whatever I've experienced, I don't know what it's like to be a woman and then have kind of like a thinly veiled, hey, I'm really into you, and then the guy just ghosts you, or I don't know what that's like. And so, but I definitely know what it's like to like totally fall for some chick who is definitely into you, and then she just like ditches you for somebody else, one of your friends, right? Like I think, I remember that being pretty brutal back when I was like 16.
The most brutal. It's so, what's kind of becoming clear to me as we're talking about this is there's, again, relationships, there's kind of this give and take. And I hate to boil it down this simplistically, but I think this is kind of true. That when in the dating sphere, the women more often are wanting a relationship. So that gives the man sort of control over whether or not this is going to turn into a relationship. The man is generally more wanting sex. So that gives women control over whether or not this is going to turn into sex. And there's kind of like this poker match between the man and the woman. The man is kind of trying to like offer a relationship in exchange for sex, and the woman's kind of trying to offer sex in exchange for a relationship. And then you just pointed out that this sort of deceptive poker match trick is often played on women, where the man offers a relationship in exchange for sex, so the woman gives sex so that she can have the relationship, so the man gets sex, and then he disappears and doesn't give her the relationship. And so he sort of swindles her in that way. And what I'm realizing with this sugar daddy thing is they're kind of starting to try to play this trick the other way around. Because the other variable that gets thrown into this, and this sounds so horrible, but I think it's true. Of course, we humans need to try to rise above this. But what I'm saying is true. The other variable that gets thrown into this is money. And that's the other thing the man is offering in exchange for sex. It's like, I'll take you out to dinner. I'll buy you a nice dinner. Maybe I'll buy you some presents or whatever. And so now the woman can take the nice dinner, can take the presents, or take some money, pretending that she's offering sex, and then disappear without giving the guy sex. And it's sort of like tit for tat. It's like, oh yeah, you fuckers have been doing that to us for a long time. Now we're playing this same fucking trick on you.
Absolutely, man. As soon as you frame it like that, I don't give a fuck about these guys getting robbed. And it's like, look at how weird my own reaction is to this, right? That's what I'm saying. This is so hard to actually grasp once you get into the weeds with this subject, because I know I'm behind the women doing this. I like absolutely support sexual liberation and exploration and freedom of I really am fully supportive of women coming into their own with their mature expressed sexuality, however the fuck that becomes, right? I'm so disgusted by repressed women's sexuality. That to me is the worst thing on the planet. So it's like, this is such a charged issue for me, and I wonder if it is for a lot of people, right?
Definitely.
And I know my particular reactions are maybe different than some people, but it's like, I really want to get behind this, but then as soon as I hear women talk about what they're going to do, and they're just like, oh, look at this guy I got going, and then she'll explain, here's what I do. I wish I should, in this conversation, I want to just click to them actually saying it, where they would just say like, oh, okay, here's what I'm going to respond so that he thinks that I'm really understanding him. And then they type it out. La, 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 la. It's just like all fraud, right?
Yep.
And it's like, I wonder how much of us as human beings, when you're in that courting phase of life, is somewhat fraudulent, and we're just like fully in denial of that. That we're like,
yes,
we're putting on this huge persona of, look at how attractive and interested I am. Like, if you and I talk about how to pick up chicks on a dating site, I would definitely have no problem saying, oh yeah, bro, you gotta, come off this way, that way. And it's like, oh, isn't that kind of disingenuous slightly? Like, isn't that what I'm railing against, is something that, but I'm like, well, bro, you can't just go out there and act like a totally needy weirdo or whatever the hell the issue would be, right?
Yeah, in fact, you and I even did one of our podcast episodes, and we were talking about that exact thing. There's this horrible reality, and this isn't the whole picture, but it's part of the picture, is that what the dating game is it's this like poker match where there's deception and fraud and exploitation, and I'm gonna try to get something from you, and I'm gonna try to beat those people, and there is this really like primitive animalistic, beat out those guys, get these girls, trick those girls, beat those guys. Like, that's an element of, and it's a very Darwinian and Freudian thing, is like being honest about the reality that there's this like battle. It's like a genetic battle to beat the other guys and to trick these people and like have your genes come out on top. And it's ingrained in our psychologies, and it's kind of disturbing.
That's awesome, man. I really think like that we're onto something with this subject. It's like I really could go off on this journey for like I wouldn't mind doing a series on this exact subject to just help figure out and categorize what are we all doing, and like in the pursuit of trying to find love and happiness. This is an option. You could, as a guy, you could totally go and get sugar babies as a real type of relationship, and strangely, you can actually have a real intimate contact as a result.
Yes.
Like
and that's super common. Tons of dudes do that. I guarantee, let's say we turned this into a whole series and we started interviewing people, we would find tons of sugar daddies and sugar babies talking about how they do this thing, there's money exchanged, and they feel really fulfilled emotionally, spiritually, and it works great for them.
Absolutely. That's what's so awesome about this, because it's like, even as we talk about it, you watch me freak out, and then like, but I'm also like, hey, but why is this cool, right?
Yep.
Why is this cool? And then at the same time, it brings up all of these internal, it's like coded reactions that we all have from having to conform to society and play the game with like a gentleman. And then I'm like, hey, but they're not playing like gentle women. They're being really bad in the way that my mom told me not to be. They're being a way that my grandma would not be happy with. And I'm like, oh, well, but look at what is happening as a result. Like, as a result, this is a true pathway towards intimacy in a very bizarre, fractured, unique presentation of life today.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, I'm down with continuing on this topic. And again, we could also try to like bring the live stream into this. If getting an exciting topic gives us motivation to figure out the live stream tech, we could also try to do that too.
That sounds awesome, actually. Like obviously it would take a second to kind of promote this one, because we haven't promoted this at all, right? We should probably
But I think when you do live stream, YouTube automatically promotes it 1,000 times more. When it's a live stream, they push it way up in their suggested videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like YouTube promotes it 1,000 times more if you're live streaming it.
All right, well, this is something I'm totally comfortable with going after. So let's do it, man. I guess.
Okay.
Let's wrap up.
All right, let's just. Yeah, we gotta. So we'll be done with this, but then we just gotta think about what technology do we need for live streaming. That's all we gotta think about. Is figure
all right,
that
cool.
out.
Yeah. I'll check it out. I'll get back to you on that.
Cool. All right, dude.
Later, man.
Bye-bye.